You have $23,000 in credit card debt, and you just realized something terrifying. You're living the exact same daily life as someone with $200,000 in debt, just at a different scale. The stress feels identical, the sleepless nights are the same, and that's because debt doesn't just change your bank account. It rewrites your entire psychology. Here's the thing nobody tells you about zero debt. It's not actually zero stress. When you have no debt, you're living in what researchers call financial limbo, where every unexpected expense feels like a potential catastrophe because you haven't built the mental muscle to handle financial pressure. You check your bank account obsessively, not because you're broke, but because that $3,000 emergency fund feels simultaneously huge and terrifyingly small. At this level, your brain is hyper-vigilant about money in a completely different way than someone drowning in payments. You'll spend 20 minutes researching whether to buy a $15 phone charger, not because you can't afford it, but because every purchase feels like it could be the one that starts your slide into debt. You see credit card offers and feel a mix of pride for not needing them and anxiety about whether you should have one just in case. The psychological trap here is that zero debt often means zero financial confidence. You avoid taking calculated risks that could improve your income because losing money feels more painful than the potential gains feel rewarding. You'll turn down social activities, skip investing opportunities, and delay major purchases indefinitely because you're protecting your debt-free status like it's made of glass. This creates what many financial advisors call the zero debt paradox. You're technically in the best position to build wealth, but your fear of debt keeps you from taking the strategic risks that actually create financial growth. Which brings us to what happens when you finally do take on that first piece of debt. But here's where it gets really twisted. That first $5,000 in debt actually feels like freedom. You finally bought the laptop you needed, fixed your car, or moved to a better apartment, and suddenly, you're living a lifestyle that feels more aligned with who you think you should be. The monthly payment seems manageable, almost laughably small compared to your income, and you start to understand why everyone else seems so comfortable carrying debt. This is the most dangerous psychological phase, because debt stops feeling like debt and starts feeling like a financial tool. You're no longer that anxious person checking their bank account 3 times a day. Instead, you feel sophisticated, like you've joined the adult world of credit scores and monthly payments. You start seeing debt as leverage rather than liability, and that mental shift changes everything about how you spend money. Your daily decision-making completely transforms at this level. Instead of agonizing over a $15 purchase, you're now thinking in terms of monthly payments. That $200 dinner becomes only $20 a month if I put it on the card. And suddenly, you're living in a parallel universe where the sticker price of everything feels negotiable. You're not irresponsible. You're just operating under a completely different mathematical framework where present-day enjoyment gets weighted against future monthly obligations. The insidious part is that this level of debt often comes with increased income or better opportunities, so you feel like you're moving in the right direction financially, even as you're building the psychological foundation for much larger debt loads. You're learning to be comfortable with owing money, and that comfort is about to become very expensive as we move into the next phase where debt stops feeling optional. Now here's where your brain starts playing tricks on you. At $25,000 in debt, you're not actually living in financial reality anymore. You're living in payment reality. Your entire relationship with money has shifted from, "Can I afford this?" to, "Can I afford the monthly payment for this?" And that psychological rewiring is about to cost you everything. At this debt level, you've mastered what financial psychologists call payment thinking, where a $30,000 car doesn't cost $30,000. It costs $450 a month. A vacation doesn't cost $4,000. It costs $120 a month for 3 years. You've essentially trained your brain to ignore the total cost of everything and focus only on whether you can squeeze another payment into your monthly budget, which feels sophisticated but is actually financial quicksand. The really insidious part is that this level of debt often coincides with lifestyle inflation that feels completely justified. You're probably earning more money than when you had zero debt, so adding another $200 monthly payment feels reasonable. You've got your debt consolidated, maybe you're even paying extra on some accounts, and you feel like you're managing everything responsibly. You're not panicking about money, you're just constantly calculating. But here's what's happening beneath the surface. You're spending enormous mental energy every single day managing payment schedules, minimum balances, and due dates. Your brain has become a financial juggling act, and while you're keeping all the balls in the air, you've lost the ability to see the bigger picture. You're optimizing for monthly cash flow instead of actual wealth building, and that shift in focus is about to accelerate dramatically as we move into the territory where debt stops being manageable and starts managing you. Welcome to $50,000 in debt, where you've accidentally become a financial project manager, running a small business called Keeping Your Head Above Water. Your phone buzzes with payment reminders, your browser bookmarks are full of balance transfer calculators, and you've developed an almost supernatural ability to know exactly which credit card has available room for which type of purchase. This is where debt stops being about buying things and becomes about buying time. You're not using credit cards for vacations anymore. You're using them to smooth out the gaps between paychecks, to cover the minimum payments on other accounts, and to handle the constant stream of life expenses that your actual income can't quite cover. You've become fluent in the language of promotional rates, balance transfers, and payment due date optimization. The psychological shift here is profound. You're no longer someone who has debt, you are someone whose life revolves around debt management. You know which day of the month each payment hits, you've calculated exactly how much breathing room you have in each billing cycle, and you've probably become genuinely skilled at maximizing credit card rewards and promotional offers. In a twisted way, you've developed expertise in a field you never wanted to enter. But here's the trap. This level of financial complexity makes you feel competent and in control, even though you're actually riding a mechanical bull that's slowly speeding up. You're managing everything beautifully right now, but you're one job loss, one medical emergency, or one major expense away from discovering that all your careful calculations were built on a foundation that was never as solid as it felt. And that's exactly what happens when we cross into six-figure debt territory. But here's where the mathematics of your life completely break down. At $100,000 in debt, you're no longer making financial decisions. You're making survival decisions disguised as financial planning. You've crossed into a psychological territory where every choice is really about which future version of yourself you're willing to sacrifice to keep today's version functioning. At this level, you've become a master of financial triage. You know exactly which bills can be paid late without serious consequences, which credit cards will extend your due date if you call them, and which accounts you can let slide for a month without triggering phone calls. You've developed an intricate understanding of grace periods, late fee structures, and the precise timing of when payments need to hit to avoid disaster. The strangest part is that you might actually be earning good money, possibly more than you ever have before. But your income has become completely disconnected from your lifestyle because every dollar is already allocated before it even hits your account. You're living paycheck to paycheck on a salary that should provide financial security, and you've started to believe that this is just what adult life feels like for everyone. Your brain has adapted to operate in permanent crisis mode, where every financial decision carries enormous weight because there's no margin for error. You can't just buy something and figure out the payment later. Every purchase requires complex calculations about which account has room, when other payments are due, and how this will affect your ability to cover next month's obligations. The psychological exhaustion is crushing, but you've learned to function through it because stopping to fully comprehend your situation feels more dangerous than just continuing to manage it day by day. Which is exactly the mindset that leads people into the final territory we need to discuss. But here's what nobody tells you about this psychological journey. Every single stage can be reversed. The same brain that learned to normalize debt can learn to normalize financial peace. The same mental muscles that got incredibly strong at managing complex payment schedules can be retrained to build wealth instead of just managing obligations. The first step isn't about the numbers, it's about recognizing which psychological stage you're in and understanding that your current relationship with money isn't permanent, it's learned behavior. If you're in the zero debt anxiety phase, you can build confidence through small, calculated risks. If you're trapped in payment thinking, you can retrain your brain to see total costs instead of monthly obligations. If you're in survival mode, you can start by creating just one small buffer that breaks the cycle of financial triage. The key insight is this: your debt level doesn't just reflect your financial choices, it reflects your mental programming about money. And programming can be changed. Start by tracking not just where your money goes, but how each financial decision makes you feel. Notice when you're thinking in payments versus total costs. Recognize when you're making survival decisions versus strategic ones. Then take one small action that moves you toward the psychological stage you want to inhabit. Maybe that's building a tiny emergency fund to break free from zero debt anxiety. Maybe it's paying off one small debt to remember what it feels like to eliminate a payment entirely. Maybe it's simply going one day without checking your account balance obsessively. Your financial psychology didn't develop overnight, and it won't change overnight. But every small step toward healthier money thinking compounds, just like debt does. Except this time, the compounding is working in your favor. Subscribe for more financial psychology breakdowns and watch this next video about escaping debt traps.